All right, it's my
Got it.
pleasure today to have with us our CEO and founder, John Warlick, on Softwave University. John, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and walking down the hallway to be on this with us.
It wasn't, now it's down the stairs and up the stairs, so it's a major, after the move, it's a much bigger commitment.
We're really excited because we're in a new location over here in Kennesaw, Georgia. Probably triple the space, John. What would you say?
Double the space, but 5 times the warehouse. That's what we grew. We had no logistics space before. We had about 500 feet, which was good because we never had any machines in inventory, because as soon as they came in by truck, we shipped them out the same day. But now we're building up the logistics side of the business.
So John, you started Softwave, is it 15 or 16 years ago now?
2006, whatever the math, that's 15, I guess.
Yeah, almost 16. Well, probably
15 and change, yeah.
Year. And you've been in this service, in this sector for probably 30 years. John won't tell you this, but he's probably one of the top 5 people in the world when it comes to this technology, electrohydraulically produced sound waves. And you know, one of the coolest things was getting to go to Vienna, Austria at the International Shockwave Symposium. And John is literally a rock star there. Every researcher, every provider comes up because John has helped fund some of the early research for the last 20, 23 years in the international community. So John, you don't get enough credit. You don't ask for it, but thank you for that, because if it wasn't for your vision and your dream, this company would not be alive. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. And an invitation to everybody. I think it's, if everybody were to go to ismst.com, every other year there's a research meeting. It's smaller than the meeting that we just attended in Vienna in November, but it's in March. I think 3rd week in March in Madrid this year. It's limited to about a day and a half. And instead of having 6 and 8 minute, sessions where, a doctor gets up and spends 6 or 8 minutes talking about everything, you get 20 and 30 minutes. In fact, the keynote speaker in every section gets an hour to present. So it's also on a lot of the early things. I mean, you can do it off a case series of 5 patients. If it's something new and unique, like cancer or brain, you get all the first cases here, the first reports. It doesn't have to be a randomized controlled trial. So we should be attending. I know I'm going. I know Matt's been is trying to go, but if COVID hasn't raised its ugly head again, we hope to be over there in force and funding a bunch of additional studies. We got to meet with 4 or 5 of our research partners, and some of the things I've mentioned that are so exciting is the brain, cancer, and also the lungs. And the heart and lungs are the 4 most exciting things that we're doing and early research on, especially over in Europe.
So, I was lucky enough to meet John 5 years ago. My wife and brother-in-law went to actual high school with John. He's a very decorated wrestler here at Walton High School in East Cobb. But John, I mean, after being in healthcare for 24 years and having wrist pain for over a decade, John literally worked with me, introduced me to this technology. I got 3 treatments in 10 days. I was 90% better. It melted away a decade of pain and suffering. And I, as the story goes, I was like, John, can I help you market this and get this out to more doctors and chiropractors and physical therapists? And he laughed, but 4.5 years later, we're close to 500 devices that we've placed, and it's been an awesome journey. Where do you see the next 5 years for Softwave as a company?
Well, one, you like to give that great example that I can't share about chiropractic and what percentage of chiropractors is accepted. I mean, I think we still have 3 or 4 or 5 really good years in chiropractic, but it's that part of the business has been turned over to you, and we hope it continues to support us as it has. It's really the foundation for everything else we're doing, because 85% of our sales right now probably are chiropractic. I would imagine the balance are urology and wound care, and then the one-off orthopedic surgeon. But it has given us, it's allowing us to invest in these other modalities. what we're spending a lot of resources at, because we're far enough along in chiropractic where it's essentially established its own KOL base where chiropractors sell to each other. I mean, I don't know, was it 30 or 50% of our business is word of mouth of people, somebody being kind enough to put in a good word and somebody calling us about buying a machine. Whereas before it was, the lead cycle would be, 6 months, 12 months, demonstrations, and they want to demo everybody else's device. And now it's not like that. But we are in the early stages, despite having FDA clearance for acute and chronic wounds, and also despite having reimbursement established for wound care, acute and chronic wounds, including diabetic foot ulcers. That vertical, what we call it, it's exciting for us because the demographics of it is such, so much money is spent on the diabetic foot patient. I mean, there's 80,000 to 100,000 amputations each year. There's one other company who has FDA approval for that right now. And that could be a huge market for us, but we really haven't put the legwork in, no pun intended, to establish that. We probably have 10 or 15 great wound care doctors right now. They're all out doing research, publishing, but we're probably a year away from where that starts establishing a word of mouth and a KOL kind of business to where where they start calling us to buy devices. Also, in addition to that, we've really done very little with the podiatry market right now. And that market's really exciting. We just started attending trade shows. We've just signed up our first 3 KOLs in podiatry. And the neat thing about the podiatrists is not only do they, have the pain vertical, but they're also in the wound care aspect as well, and including the orthopedic aspect as far as stress fractures and even non-unions and stuff like that. But the one that we're most excited about, that we're spending a lot of time and money, is the neuropathic patient. I know chiropractors see that as well, but the podiatrist, it really dominates, I think, their practice. And I think we do that better than any other technology out there. And once we've established that beyond, the 30 or 50 patient anecdotal study, and we have a couple randomized controlled trials underway, we think we can be a dominant force in podiatry, especially in the neuropathic foot and limb market.
Yeah,
and that's a huge opportunity for us.
Think about it. Chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy is still the #1 reason why cancer patients have to stop treatment. So, I think you're so right in the wounds. And I like to tell our doctors, and this is good news to share with your patients as well, but as of January 1st of this year, 2022, we're now on the Medicare fee reimbursement schedule. So podiatrists and wound centers would actually can get compensated and it's pretty good. Like once you get on Medicare for one thing, they may add it on for others. I know so many of us on this call love that it's a cash-based program, but eventually when you become the most efficient and effective way to treat pain and non-healing fractures, insurance companies have to step up their game and start paying.
Yeah, you just mentioned it too. I mean, by the end of the year, the FDA has reclassified non-healing fractures. There's 300 non-union patients each year. A non-union, I think, is defined as a patient who hadn't healed after 9 months, and actually has no other procedure during the last 90 days. And that's a nice business for us. We dominate that space in Europe. We do it better than any other technology. The standard of care here in the States is electromagnetic stimulators, which is it's laughed at over in Europe. We average 85% success with a single treatment, even on patients who had 3 failed surgeries and average 80 years of age for non-healing fractures. Well, the FDA has finally reclassified that to class 2 and has said that they will accept our European data. We have an extensive several thousand patient database that shows our success is, and we're just waiting to submit that. The FDA formally has to reclassify it. Their panel meeting met a couple months ago and said, yes, with COVID, they've been slow. It should have happened already, but we should have non-union FDA clearance by the end of the year. And the other thing that some of your chiro guys may or may not get involved with, and the only reason I bring it up is because some of the other companies are involved with it. We haven't really pushed it with our chiropractic friends and partners, but there's probably hundreds of chiropractors out there right now selling alternative devices for men's and women's sexual health, primarily men's sexual health, and it was through a portal called Gainswave primarily. But we do that better than anybody else. If it takes them 10 treatments, it takes us 4 treatments. We have randomized controlled trial going on with Dr. Irwin Goldstein. Soon, 2 of the other University of California university hospitals will also join that, and Baylor should join that as well. And hopefully within 3 or 4 months, Mayo's coming on to do that as well. So by the end of the year, we should have randomized controlled data proving the efficacy for erectile dysfunction and also for nocturia, which is frequent nighttime urination, which I think is a bigger market, if man be honest, than erectile dysfunction. So by the end of this year, we ought to have strong clinical evidence and have submitted to the FDA for erectile dysfunction and nocturia, as well as non-healing fractures and as well as stress fractures. So these are all other potential indications for our friends, on the Softwave University portal.
John is sitting in his office here in Kennesaw in our new headquarters here for Softwave. You see a lot of the patents behind it. We have, I believe, 45 patents either gone through or pending. Again, that comes from John Warlick's vision, his Robert Warlick, Mark Gronowski, one of our other founders, and also a wonderful gentleman, you'll see his name on a lot of these patents, is Dr. Wolfgang Schaden. And I think this is a good time to announce the relationship that you've had for decades with him. But John, could you tell us a little bit about Wolfgang? Dr. Schaden is for the last 10 years has been part of the Austrian workers' comp system. He's been the director of it the last few years. Go ahead, John. Why don't you tell him a little about?
Yeah, he started in the early days. I mean, he was our founding medical director, and sort of the predecessor company to this one was another publicly traded company. Healthtronics at one time was valued at $800 million. And they had the Oscitron, which is the large shockwave engine, we called it back then, primarily for non-healing fractures and plantar fasciitis. It's highly effective. You use it one time instead of multiple times, but it's so effective. It's also very painful. It must be done in the OR under anesthesia. But it works. It works great. But he was the medical director for Healthtronics. And then when we started this company, I came out of retirement, we brought him back. And at the time, he was one of the leading trauma surgeons in Austria. He'd actually been hired by the Austrian government to prove shockwaves do not work, because the workman's comp system, which I consider to be the best healthcare system in the world, they have this policy in Austria that if a technology exists in Europe that is not available in Austria, they will pay for you to go seek that therapy elsewhere. And for non-healing fractures, Austria maybe only had 5,000 or 10,000 patients a year, but they were flying all these patients all over Europe to treat. They're coming back. It was incredibly expensive. It was in the millions of dollars. So they engaged him to prove it did not work in a randomized controlled trial so they could quit, making these payments. And within 6 months, he proved it worked. The light bulb went off, and he's been addicted ever since. He's more or less the father of shockwaves, especially the low intensity shockwave devices. But he worked himself up from a microsurgeon, hand surgeon, trauma surgeon, in one of their 12 trauma hospitals to running the medical director for the entire insurance company of all of Austria. There's actually 2. The workman's comp represents all workers, all military, all employees, all students. And it's the largest, but they have incredible policy. They don't have a piece of paper, the entire system. Every one of our patients is digital. They have all of the records. They can go back and, prove that our non-healing, fracture patients had 3 failed surgeries, average 85 years old, can tell you the exact patient history. But he worked himself up to the top. And the neat things about workman's comp is they invest tens of millions of euros every year into research, and they research the most expensive cost to the healthcare system. And those happen to be diabetic ulcers. They happen to be ischemic heart disease. They happen to be brain and spine trauma. And so they are funding all of our research. We have 3 FDA studies being funded by the Austrian workman's comp system to the tune of 10 or 20 million euros a year. And Wolfgang was overseeing that. Now, and to our benefit, historically, he's never been able to be an individual advocate because he represented the greater good, the healthcare system. He couldn't talk about his relationship with us, but he just retired effective February 1st, and he'll be joining us full time, and he'll be over here in the States at least 1 week a year. He's going to be our international medical director, and he really is the most compelling speaker on this subject. He can go back from day one and just share story after story, and every publication that's ever been presented at any international meeting, he has gone through him. He knows more about this than he's forgotten more about this than I'll ever know. And he's going to be a great advocate for us, and he can finally advocate for us after all of these years. Starting March 1, he'll be coming on us full time, and we'll be overseeing him in Madrid for the first time, since he comes on. And he's really big. There is a 12-center spine trauma study going on in every trauma hospital in Austria. It'll be the basis for our FDA study to prove, based on our pilot trial, that we had about a 50% reduction in paralysis if we could get to a spine trauma patient within 72 hours of treatment of injury. And that is a randomized controlled trial at the highest level. It's underway at 12 of 13 spine trauma centers in Europe and Austria. And we should have that data start leaking in about a year from now and be submitted to the FDA. So he's an invaluable resource for us.
That was really a cool part of listening to that, the spinal cord injury pilot study that's going on. And one of the things that I found was so fascinating, that they found that there was a window from the time of injury to 8 days that you had. And the sweet spot was 72 hours, that if you were able to treat them with the Softwave technology, that you actually were able to decrease the inflammation, decrease the amount of scar tissue, and really decrease the amount of loss of function. John, I mean, I still have videos of you explaining to me about toll-like receptor 3. I want to bring up Johannes Hofeld as well, who was one of your early researchers who you helped fund 14 years ago. Dr. Hofeld is a cardiac surgeon, and that's his full-time job. And as a side gig, he's an internationally renowned researcher. Can you just touch bases a little bit what Johannes Hofeld's going to be doing for health on an international level?
Yeah, well, originally we had funded them back with our cardiology spinoff called CRT. Back when money was easy, we raised about 5 or 6 million euros. A gentleman by the name of Joko Rissanen did that for us. But with that, they did all the animal studies, the basic research, the test tube stuff, and they went all the way through the first 10 patients and in Austria once again, and we were able to show statistically significant that we were able to increase the ejection fraction of the heart between 20 and 30%. The best stem cell study ever in the history of the world showed a 5 to 6% increase in ejection fraction. But the data was too good too early. We pitched it to Medtronic, Biotronic. They said it's too good to be true. Come back when you have randomized controlled trials. Money got tight in 2012 and 14, and we just couldn't do everything. I mean, one of the critiques of our company is sometimes we're a mile wide and an inch deep, because here we are, one of the smallest companies around doing heart, brain, spine, pain, everything. And the heart is a huge indication. It's always going to be class 3 with the FDA. But so we ran out of money. We couldn't fund him anymore. But he was so excited, and based on all the data, we essentially donated our research to him, and we continue to be a big shareholder in his company. But he has just now completed his first randomized controlled trial. And from what I understand, the data is not just as good as our early data, but better. And with that, we hope to be, one, at the minimum, his biggest shareholder, but 2, we hope to be involved in helping him find an American partner, and hope that we can factor into being his American partner, funder, help him with the FDA. But what's so exciting, there's an American company called Shockwave Medical who's treating not the ischemic heart, which is a much bigger market, but they're treating the calcified aortas, and they're doing it by doing it invasively, going up through the groin with a balloon catheter with 2 electrode tips inside the water-filled balloon catheter, and they're putting it in the calcified aorta, and they're improving blood flow, reducing inflammation, reducing angina scores, and whatever they can do invasively, we can do better non-invasively. Now, their business model is better because they have a $3,000 disposable, which we won't have. But at the end of the day, we think we're going to be much more competitive, because we think we can treat you, subcostally and substernally, maybe 3, 4, 5 times, and have a better outcome than they have. And the exciting thing is, even based on what I consider to be their primitive technology and horrible use of the technology, but I'm jealous, because they, on any given day, are worth between $5 and $8 billion doing something that we do better than they do. We do faster, better, and cheaper, and we have better data than they'll ever have. And we have, and even we think we can challenge some of their patents just because whatever they've been doing, we've been doing for years. So we think there's a $10 billion opportunity sitting in front of us that we will be able to leverage our relationships with Heart Regeneration, which is Johannes's company. But we think that we will be able to, combination of two companies, be the next Shockwave Medical.
Well, the coolest thing was that you helped take, Johannes helped take a hypothesis to man, right? Over that 14 years, and really prove the hypothesis of you and Dr. Schaden and Nicholas and some of our counterparts in Germany. The other cool thing, he's now treated over 60 bypass surgery patients utilizing similar technology to us right on the heart. And then even a year later, they're showing 11% improvement in left ventricular ejection fraction, which is considered stable if it's been there for a whole year. But also, I say this all the time, be so good that they create a new definition or words to describe you. He's actually creating cardiac regeneration. That really has never been a term other than what you guys have kind of brought together to work on this. So John, they called him, he's the toll-like receptor 3 guy. That was his nickname, everybody said. Can you touch on, we don't have a ton of time. I mean, we could stay on a little longer today, but can you give us some of the insight on how important this gene is, toll-like receptor 3?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is, I mean, it's the next stop. We in the early days, we were wrong. I mean, actually, we were right, but we were wrong. We used to describe the mechanism of action. We used to say that shockwaves were causing trauma non-invasively. It was the hot poker theory without the hot poker. And to an extent, that was right. But we actually all thought this was based on the kidney stone model, where we're destroying something. And our ability to cause micro traumas and micro fractures, one step back, two step forward, painful, but going forward. And we were wrong the entire time. And the breakthrough that we had in 2005 and all our patents are based on low energy, unfocused shockwaves at levels that it's an impossibility to cause trauma and cavitation. So we don't cause the damage. We don't have one step back, two step forward. We have 4 step forward. And much less painful, much faster, cover broad areas. But every 2 or 3 years, the mechanism is further described, okay? In one of the earliest studies we had, we proved that the cellular membrane became permeable. And then he finally, based on his hypothesis, knowing that toll-like receptor 3 was responsible for inflammation, he's the one who stumbled on that, the magic voodoo stick that we do is it's all about our ability to modulate inflammation. And his hypothesis was it was being modulated through the toll-like receptor 3 pathway, which pharma has spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to communicate with, because they know that's the Mac Daddy of inflammation pathways. Well, he proved it. He proved it, randomized controlled data. He's proved it every which way. And it's made us a lightning rod for this. People don't want to admit that one of the world's smallest healthcare companies, has discovered the holy grail for inflammatory process.
I love that point.
And so he was the first time to prove it in a randomized basis. And now he's even at the next step, because we've now gone from toll-like receptor 3, the next step they keep talking about now that still involves absolute toll-like receptor 3 pathway, but they now talk about, and you know more about than I do with your training, but it's also further involves, the membranes becoming permeable, the exosome channels expanding, exosomes being cascaded under the influence of shockwaves. Essentially, we fool the body or the cell into coughing up their mRNA, which is which when it's in the extracellular matrix, it acts as a beacon. It acts as it turns on the biologic pump, the signal. The signal turns on the biologic pumps. And now, a lot of other people out there are also talking about, at the same time they say exosomes, they talk about microvesicle shedding. That's another big buzzword out there right now. But we do all of those, every bit of these things, all 3 of those buzzwords, the exosomes and microvesicle shedding and TLR3, and now TLL4 receptors as well. Because in the brain, the TLL4 receptor is there's too much information. And so we're having to down regulate that, or is it vice versa? I get so confused. One of them goes up, one of them goes down, but the TLR3 and 4 pathways, as well as microvesicle shedding and also the exosomes, are the 3 buzzwords out there when you're talking about this, all of the biotech companies. And we're trying to reposition ourselves, quite frankly, as a true biotech company. I know it sounds strange, a device company being biotech, but we actually are manipulating the body on a biotech basis. And but we're doing it without adding or subtracting anything. We're just having the body, all through the cellular communication process, which Wolfgang Schaden is the biggest advocate, going back to him.
So that whole process that you just described, and the buzzwords that I really want our doctors to be able to communicate to their patients in their community is mechanotransduction, is really what you just summed it up. And it's the compression of that cell membrane, then expansion, right? It's this, if you look at, our logo, in that we have that high pressure, low pressure, and that creates that compression and expansion, and it knocks off those oxidative stressors and agents. It allows nutrients in, waste products out. If you guys can understand that from a basic level, there's no damage to the cell. It literally, the way I call it, it's like it's taking 2 natural phenomenons, a lightning bolt and thunder, right? And we were able to put it in this handheld applicator, and then your supersonic waves are going through, and these cells are like, wow, alert! They're hitting the fire alarm, and your whole innate immune system, which is really the first responders for any type of foreign antigens or viruses or anything that enters your defense mechanism of your body. So those toll-like receptors 3 and 4 are like the first responders. And the thing I thought that was really cool is that it's like we're flipping on this switch of cellular communication. When you said those microvesicles are shed, there are these little ships that float between either cells and say, hey, we need help over here. We don't know. We just got hit by a thunderstorm. And so all these helper cells and repair cells start migrating to the treated area. The coolest thing that Johannes Holfeld's team, and they won 4 of the 6 awards, but they wanted to show how important toll-like receptor 3 was in this whole healing process. And maybe the secret weapon of everything that he found out is that this accelerates the body's natural healing ability.
Most importantly, though, when he went back, the most amazing data, there are ways where you can turn off the TLR receptor. You can remove it from the equation.
It's called an antagonist. An antagonist.
And when he did that, the entire biologic mechanism just shut down. There was no healing. There was no improvement. I mean, he's absolutely proved how it works, why it works. And we're the one technology that I know of. There might be others that I don't know of that is able to communicate and affect that process. And it also goes back to, if you go back to, on the most basic level, you talk to old time farmers, it goes back to where, how about go back to mushroom hunters? Mushrooms only grow after a thunderstorm. Okay, and then that the whole biology, and then so you talk about what we're doing to a mushroom farmer, he'll say, of course that's why it works, thunder and lightning. And it goes back to the most basic level, because if you go back to, I don't want to get religious or non-religious here, but if you believers in physics and Big Bang Theory, 4 of the most important types of energy that were as a result of the Big Bang were heat, electromagnetic, acoustic, and light. And we always love to play up the acoustic side because we do that better than anybody else. But we also know that the electromagnetic pulse that we create is bigger than any electromagnetic pulse from any of these PEMF devices that they do. We have a huge electromagnetic field that's created. So some combination of heat, electromagnetic, acoustic, and light is, and we don't even know what it is. We're still learning. But we know when we took the electromagnetic pulse and shielded for it, our results went down by 50%. So it's the combination, the primary ones of acoustic and electromagnetic that we're still trying to understand. And maybe we'll save that for next year's research. But this technology, it is the Big Bang Theory. It produces all of these types of energy. And the mechanotransduction is the most generally understood, explanation
Part
of
of that.
this entire process, I think.
Just to go back to the other award that was given for Johannes Hofeld's team was the genetic engineers literally took these little scissors called CRISPR scissors, where you can go into a double helix strand, and they cut out the toll-like receptor 3 gene. And guess what happened? All those 4 or 5 cascades of healing did not happen again. So again, he proved it 2 different ways. And I think it's taken me a couple months to really absorb that research, but it's been so important for us to share with our community and our doctors here. John, I think one of the things I always hear about, and I used to be like, oh, does it really do this? I kind of nicknamed this the stem cell machine years ago. But the real cool thing is that we have 26 or 28 papers now that show that within 45 minutes, we're activating the body's endogenous stem cell system to come out of this dormant state and come like, do you see in the near future, like, will the FDA ever give clearance? Where are we in that cycle of?
Yeah, well, we've approached the FDA about this, and it's funny is that the FDA does not have an approval or clearance for stem cells. I mean, it doesn't exist, because the last and only FDA approval or clearance that we want, and we know we do it, and we've proven it in randomized controlled data, but they don't offer it. So we're back in this negotiation with them, because we want them to clear us to prove that we activate stem cells. And what we found to be the most important, Tom Liu out at UCSF, unpublished to date, but he's learned, is that the resident stem cells, within minutes, their mitochondria are activated. They get turned on almost immediately. And so this big argument we have about, can you just treat one joint each time? That resident stem cell argument sort of defeats that, because over years I always prefer to do one joint at once, but sometimes some athletes coming in town, I only get one crack at them, and I'll do 2, 3, 4, 5 things, and damn, all 5 things don't get better. So it's a neat thing, because I always thought about, if you're wanting a stem cell response, we'd always say, well, you don't want them going 5 different directions, you want to all be in one. But I'm not even sure that's true anymore. But that's something the group, we can find out as a whole. I think commercially it makes sense to limit it to one treatment, but in a pinch, 2 or 3, you can get by with it. But we have proven that the resident stem cells might be the most important ones, because they also, not only are they resident, the cardio, myocytes, they've evolved 1 or 2 generations from the basic stem cell, so they're further along. And it seems like we're able to stimulate them, and they're closer, and they've already differentiated further along, so they're ready to be most helpful. So you don't have to worry about a heart stem cell, being called off to go treat somebody's plantar fasciitis. I don't think that's the case. I think the second bang is that after the resident stem cells, then you get the other stem cells that come from the bone marrow and the fat, and that kind of thing. I'm sure there's some issues there, but the resident stem cells are only activated under the influence of a shock wave that directly, that turns them on or wakes them up, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, probably the coolest thing is what Dr. Holfeld is showing also, where they actually they had genetically kind of created green stem cells in one mice and red stem cells in the other. They shockwaved the green stem cells. They transported the green stem cells into the red mice, and then what happened?
They were able to essentially kill all of the bone through the bone radiation. They essentially killed all the stem cells. And then they were able to harvest fluorescent stem cells from another mouse, inject it into the tail, and then we'd cause a wound on one limb of the mouse, and you could actually watch the fluorescence within hours as it migrates from the tail where we injected the stem cells, or as it migrates up to the limbs of the mice, and then you would see only on the limb that we had injured in shockwave was it fluorescent green. The rest of the mouse, there was no fluorescence. The stem cells had all migrated to the one injured and shockwave treated limb. And that's a very compelling, it's hard to argue with that. Because the final thing is that our colleagues in Germany, they really laugh at the Americans, the stem cell market, the $1 billion cash market that we have over here, because the most studied ischemic model in the world is the ischemic heart model. It's been studied to the tune of probably $1 billion of research. And the one guy at one time had statistically significant data, showed a 5 to 6% increase in the ejection fraction of the heart. And they tried to recreate that a dozen times. They never could do that. The Europeans have walked away from it. You can't go over to Europe. It's not a big cash business. Over here, we're 10 years further behind. But the stem cell industry hates us because we are the one and only true stem cell. I can't say stem cell device because all we're doing is we create stem cell signals, stem cell attractants. We fool the body, think it's been injured. Stem cell attractants are produced, and then your resident stem cells are turned on, and it causes recruitment of your own stem cells. And hypothetically, at that point in time, if you were to inject other stem cells, maybe there would be a benefit. So maybe the combination would be therapeutic. But our European colleagues, the vast majority of them laugh at us about how much money we spend, $10,000 at a time, harvesting stem cells from bats, spinning them and blah, 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 and shooting them back in. The standing joke is they just save the money. They spin you around 1,000 times and and cut out the middleman. But we are the most efficient stem cell technology out there. We're not a stem cell device, but we fool the body into thinking it's been injured, and the body produces stem cell attractants. And these stem cell attractants, start the biologic cascade more or less.
Yeah, I mean, and I think as research starts coming out, I think it's not always the most effective and efficient that gets the attention, especially when you're going against pharmaceutical companies who spend $9 to $10 billion a year on advertising. But I do feel like organically we're growing, and I will say this, John, I know in closing, I want to respect everybody's time. It's like our goal here at this Softwave is really to bring your vision to marketplace. And it's just been an honor to work with you and help get this to the masses. We will end pain and suffering for millions of people without a doubt. We will end the use of opioids and people having cortisone injections. And this dream would not stay alive if it wasn't for you and your vision. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to go back though, but like Matt made a joke about it. It was funny. The first thing I told Matt when he said he wanted to come work, bring this chiropractor, I said, Matt, chiropractor is never going to spend $75,000. A waste of time. And he spent the last 4 years proving me wrong. And I'm thankful you have, Matt. Thank you so much.
Well, yeah, thank you to our peers out there, all you guys on the call, Dr. Bruce. We see you guys all. Chris Zimmer has been great.
And everybody's got my phone number. I mean, quite frankly, at Softwave University, is somebody upset because they feel like they didn't get good customer service. That really pisses me off because anybody can call me anytime and we'll get something fixed. And I'm at 404-402-6844. If you ever feel like something's not going on, that's why I'm here nowadays, okay? Because we do mess up. We make mistakes. We're constantly improving things. But if somebody questions our commitment to customers and customer service, they can't do that because this whole organization is about that. We fix things. We make mistakes, but darn it, we'll fix it. So
if
you got any problem, give me a call.
And listen, the most beautiful part about this journey we've been on is we have 90 to 95.
Yeah, the phone's ringing. I got 35 people calling.
we got 95 doctors on a waiting list, and 2021 we were in a hyper growth state, and hopefully we can maintain that. The great thing is our counterparts in Germany are ramping up. Just give a little insight, John. Where do you think? I think they projected that they would be.
Yeah, I mean, they tripled their production last year, and they just bought a whole bunch more space. The next 8 weeks, they're going to double it again. So I mean, but we're starting from such a low base. We didn't get our first FDA clearance till 2 Christmases ago. We've been fighting them for 12, 13 years before they finally took their finger out of the dike. And because for one time we were the only shockwave company out there except for Sanuwave. Now these other big companies, there's now several publicly traded companies involved in this. There's $5 billion companies selling this in sex health right now. The vast majority of them are violating our patents, and that's another story. But it's accepted. We're no longer the tip of the spear. The tip of the spear often goes bankrupt. And we survived, and now the next 5 years we want to thrive. So thanks for your patience. But we easily going to, in 8 weeks we're going to double again, and then another 90 or 120 days after that we'll double again. By the end of the year, by summer, our backlog ought to be gone. We pro forma that out. But it's going to be, apologize, a tough next 90 days, literally 95. I think we went over 100 here this last week.
Yeah, but
no thanks to you, Matt. Appreciate
it's good. Yeah, I took off a couple of weeks. It's a good problem to have. I mean, I think the results speak for themselves. Doctors are getting predictable patient outcomes. The financial results are awesome. And everybody on the line, I mean, you know, our commitment is to you. Your success is our success. And that's really, you know, it comes right from our CEO. He's in the trenches with us every day. And thank you for that. So with that, next week, I will tell you, pretty cool. We're going to have Jonathan Boone, who is a doctor of physical therapy and athletic trainer for the Miami Dolphins. He will be on and really talking to us about how to take care of world-class athletes in the most effective manner and how he's utilizing Softwave. You guys excited about that? Would that be somebody you want to hear? Not as good as John, but awesome.
No, we appreciate it. Hey, and just this week, you know, we Pittsburgh Steelers have been renting a machine for years. They just called in and said, we have to own this. They bought a machine this month. Stanford finally bought a machine this month. UCSD finally bought a machine this month. So a lot of the big time institutions are stepping up and said, Mayo, we're in the budget for this year. So we're really excited about it's being accepted by, you know, some of the higher authorities, Mayo, Cleveland Clinic, UPMC, Hospital Special Surgery, you know, the Steelers, the Knicks, the Nets, the Indians, the Cubs, the Lakers every day. Lakers do 200,000 pulses a month. Somebody had to explain how that happens. I mean, there's only 5 starters on a basketball team. So let's I mean, this because they're twice as big as I am. Let's say they use 1,000 pulses of treatment. That's 200 treatments a month. Something's going on.
That's amazing.
Somebody has a very active sex life out there. I can assure you that.
Whatever. All right, guys.
180,000 shocks.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone who came and attend. We will keep this recording. We'll place it on Softwave View. John, it's always a pleasure. We always learn something. One of my favorite interviews is over 2.5 years ago on Free My Pain Now. John was it was episode number 3. Go back. This guy he's got a crystal ball. He's got a beautiful vision and where you go. And he also can pick stocks pretty well. Thank you, guys.
That's the next thing. Thanks, guys. Thanks for supporting us. Bye-bye. Cheers.